I have seen that you've been working in terms of building like workplace cultures. You've been working to make certain that you're building opportunities, not just in terms of workplaces to whom gets into the space, but how people can thrive there, people can grow there. You've done quite a bit, but like if you were going to narrow down and think about some of the impact that you've had from the works that you've done, what is the thing that stands out the most to you?
I'm in kind of like two minds of where to go with this question. And of course I can pick out, perhaps some examples of where workplace culture has been improved, or where, there have been exceptional examples of leadership and how that has served the longer term strategy. And there are plenty of those examples and kind of like success stories. But when I don't know why, but it kind of like, what I feel like I want to actually talk about is the impact that our work has on us. As a business owner, as someone who's, been a business owner for about 4.5 years now, I think the person that my business actually has impacted the most, or has the biggest impact on, is actually me. Because again, as someone who's running a business centered around transformation and impact, it kind of means that you, or me in this case, has to experience that level of transformation and impact first and foremost. And I kind of like live by this bit of a, motto that you can't take anyone deeper than you're willing to go yourself.
That's
And
very true.
so, and you said just a moment ago about kind of like, putting your voice out there and stuff like that. To really create meaningful impact, you gotta realize and really step into your courage, your power, and your voice. And so, so people who have been, systemically and institutionally marginalized often are the people who are doing this work. They are often the ones whose voices, whose power has been suffocated, has been silenced. And now we are saying, we are going to come and do this transformation, this impact. And actually, while you have all of this energy and all this purpose inside you to really manifest it in a real world, there are, a number and layers of blocks that your environment has created. And so, and hence I keep on, going back that actually, my business has had the biggest impact of me, because for me to create the level and scale of impact that I want to see in the world, I have to clear out all of these, stories, these blocks that I already have, within myself. Because it's easy to, register your business and say, I'm an entrepreneur now. Because I think that entrepreneurship is so fetishized in our world that we don't necessarily kind of like realize the work that's involved in it. That's the first part. And the second part is, are we check collecting here? Are we collecting checks for one-off pieces of work? Or if we are talking and calling that impact, or when we talk about impact, that we are actually showing up for the long run. But that requires some internal work. And maybe I'm getting a little bit like woo-woo here,
No.
for the business talk, but I think this
But
is really, really important.
this is very relevant, because I was actually thinking about like when you're training out leaders and you have your own business, like what was like the thing that you've had to learn as a leader yourself? Because when you're working with people, when you're trying to work and to develop folks, that is absolutely what you're saying. You have to kind of eat your own dog food to a certain degree. And I was wondering, like, what's the learning, that serving that you've had to take on for yourself that's been the biggest thing that you've had to say, you know what, I have to challenge this. There's a lot of learning and unlearning that takes place. And actually, I was talking with Franklin about that, like, in a previous conversation. A lot of learning and unlearning is a constant thing that you have to do as you develop and you grow in leadership. But what were some of the lessons that you've had to like really take on in this past year for yourself to be able to grow into a new direction as you've been constantly, doing in your career?
What a beautiful question. You know what? And this is something that I actually wrote a post about some time ago, about the importance of pausing and allowing space between a vision and execution. Because again, our workplace environments are very like go, 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 go. Let's create strategy, let's create vision, let's give it to someone to create it into a marketing material. Let's get someone to create it into a presentation that we're going to present to someone. And so everything is kind of like this snowball effect. But I think it can turn into a very destructive snowball. It can turn into an entity that grows extra pairs of legs and arms and heads that you actually then end up strategizing, not long after you end up strategizing how to actually chop them off. So for me, it definitely has been taking a pause, not apologizing for taking a pause. Like I have had to take pauses, and I've had to learn taking a pause the hard way, through burnout, through creative plateaus, through, all of these kinds of things. I was on a sabbatical last year, and it's really interesting because a lot of people are like, you took a sabbatical from your business? Yes, I did. I had to, for me to be again able to serve better. I had to do it because otherwise I would be unproductive myself. I would keep on, burning my energy. And again, if we're talking about impact is a long-term thing, and we need to be here for the long run, right? And sometimes like we might not see the impact of our big vision in our lifetime, but we still need to serve it, and we still need to sow the seeds for it. Because if we start, running our businesses and talking about impact the same way as our politicians do in kind of like 4-year stints at best, we're just going to be eating away from our resources.
Yeah. I was actually just having a conversation with someone today. She's a fantastic person who makes such an impact in her company, in her community, in the world around her. And she's been sick with various kinds of like flus and things for the past like 2 months or so at this point, right? And I was just realizing, hey, you know what? You've been taking care of everybody. Do you get a chance to take care of yourself as well, And it's a thing where sometimes people who have so much impact, they're doing so much for the world, they can sometimes forget to pause and replenish themselves because you will get depleted. I mean, I think sometimes we have to acknowledge our own humanity and think about, when it comes to not just in terms of the resources that you have to give, the time that you have to give and all that sort of thing, but also thinking about the energy, thinking about your health. These are all things where I want to see us do better in terms of making certain that we're taking care of ourselves to be able to keep going for that long haul. Because this is not, as people will say, this is a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to impact, right? But the reality is, you got to fuel yourself up differently for those kind of things. You took a sabbatical, and I'm really curious as to how you replenished yourself in that year. So that way you had more creativity to offer, that you had more energy to offer for other people. What did you do to refuel yourself?
So the creativity part, I think, is a really interesting conversation to be had, because creativity probably was or lack of thereof was probably the reason why I took it. Because I think, when some of my, friends or other, new business owners in the field come to me and they're like, how did you do it? What's your best business advice and stuff like that? And I always, say to them that as, business owners, entrepreneurs, storytellers, people who create impact, whatever it is, you can't put a proposal together without creative energy. Like, and when you're depleted, and I can speak about that from firsthand experience with burnout, the first thing that leaves the building is creative energy. And it takes a relatively long time, even after you kind of like physically recovered, until it actually comes back. And you have to like recreate, and you have to create, new home for that creative energy. So I just urge people to just be very, not to play with that, and be very, intentional about it, and create those kind of like everyday things around self-care and stuff. And I think one of the, biggest ways for self-care is discipline. And discipline also kind of like showing up for yourself every single day. What are your morning? What are your everyday? What are your, evening routines? How are you really taking care of yourself? Not like when you're feeling completely burnt out, you go and get some coffee or take yourself to a massage. Well, that's not going to really, fix it. So certainly one thing that I have, again, learned is that discipline with your own mental well-being and your, holistic well-being is one of the greatest acts of self-love. And so, speaking of my sabbatical, it was a very interesting time for me because I was in a very interesting energetic point. Kind of like beginning of last year, we had come out of pandemic. People had started to return to businesses, had started to return to physical spaces, be it offices, be it meetups, be it conferences. And since as a bit of a digital nomad, I felt a little bit isolated from those spaces. And I guess I had in the process allowed for certain people to come into my life, people who I respected, people who I valued at that time, people who are called friends at that time. But what I, hadn't realized, with all of my best intentions at that time, is that they were very kind of like one-way relationships, and they were actually depleting me. So kind of like beginning the first half of the year last year was what I call the great spring cleaning for me. And so I cut or exited one way or another 4 very, very important people out of my life. And they were, people who I had business relationships with, and there were people who I had personal relationships with. But they were people who were unapologetically, without consent, extracting from me. And so I had to, but that's on me, right? This is not me shading, anyone. This is on me because I had to take responsibility of the reality that I had created for myself. And this is not like to shame or judge myself. Absolutely not. This is 100% kind of like taking responsibility. And after that, and this is another thing that no one tells you about, like running your own business and creating impact, is that there will be times when you will need to exit bad business, when you will need to exit relationships that have, become toxic. You'll have to, and, both professional and personal. And what no one talks about is that, especially if you have really invested your heart and soul and friendship and vulnerability in those relationships, exiting them come with grief. It comes with grief. And no one talks about that. And I realized that actually after this great spring cleaning, real grief had set in, which I hadn't allowed space for. And so the sabbatical was really me allowing space for that, clearing that out, finding peace with that, and to really come back fresh. And as part of that, the interesting part was I almost had to exit my business from my business. And let me elaborate on this, right? Many people will know so when I came back at the beginning of this year, and this has been kind of like in the makings from end of last year, I completely rebranded, I changed the name of my business because again, my business carried legacy that didn't align with the impact that I wanted to create, that had the legacy of energy in there that I didn't want to carry forward. And so I had to kind of like close it and reopen a new chapter. So it really does feel right now like I'm starting from scratch, but you never kind of like start from stage one, you start from experience. And so I really honor all that experience. So my sabbatical was bittersweet. I actually went to Finland. I don't remember how long I was there. I went to Finland because I know you're in Finland, kind of northern
You
part
didn't
of
say
Finland.
hi?
To the north. Listen, I locked myself away, literally, metaphorically and physically. I locked myself away. I went to Finland, and you know what I did for like 3 months? I literally was in the forest picking berries. I went back
I love that.
to hunter-gatherer energy. Because one of the things, so this is interesting, like one of the things when I took the sabbatical, for me, the intention, one of the key intentions that I set for it was I want to, with all of this energy and clearing people out, you feel like you've gone a little bit too far away from yourself. And so one of my intentions was to come back to me. And for that, I needed to reconnect with my land. I needed to reconnect with my ancestors. I needed to reconnect with my people, with my traditions. And so I spent that summer in Finnish forest picking berries, like buckets and upon buckets of berries and mushrooms and vegetables and whatnot, and preserving. I preserved like hundreds of jars of jams and pickled cucumbers and winter salad. And I would be calling my grand, she's 84 now. And I would be calling her up and I'd be like, how do you make them winter salad? How do you make those winter salads? And she would give me recipes and I would call my mom. And it was just so beautiful to like reconnect with my, you know, with the women in my lineage, with my ancestors, with their wisdom of creation, but in a very different way. So it definitely helped me to get kind of like through the grief, to work it all out, and just come back to me and how I would build myself back up from there. That wasn't my concern at that time. Yeah, I knew that the pathways would reveal themselves, the how would reveal itself, and I just needed to stay in and take care of myself, I guess. Yeah.
I love
Long answer
this.
to your question.
No, but I love this. This is very much in the same season that I've kind of been in this past, I would say this whole year, to be honest. So maybe you are like my guide in that way because you were doing that last year. This is my process for this year. So the beginning of this year, I ended up actually leaving a role, and I mean, I could have come back after burnout, but the reality is I realized for me to find my way out of burnout, I had to give myself professional hope. And I had to give myself hope in general. I think that was a big thing. And that took like taking out the things from my life that I felt, detracted more than it gave. And also just in general, trying to just realign. I think that theme of realignment is absolutely key. I went back to my values and I just went back and I said, hey, what are the things that I value in life? What are the things that I think, if I were going to, if I had, 5 years left on this earth, if I had, 1 year left on this earth, how would I want to invest my time? And what would be the things that I would want to say that I've done? And kind of recentering myself back on those things. I reevaluated all the things I was doing professionally. It's actually a worksheet. I'm a person who likes numbers. Actually, I made a worksheet out of this, and I was like, all right, so these are the values. These are the activities that I could do. I scored various kinds of things. And I was like, so what are the combinations of things that I could do for a life that's a worthwhile one for me, And it took a while, a lot of subtraction at first. The subtraction was key, taking a lot of different kind of things out of my life. But then having that period to pause, I love that, and just to be able to reflect and consider what is it that I want to do going forward. And this is a season of my life where I'm adding things back in, where I'm starting to say, conversations like these are seeds for me. These are, seeds of hope, seeds of growth, where I get to have those kind of this learning moments, these are moments where you get to exchange with people. And I've never not grown from that. So this is something I always want to be able to plant in my life. And I make certain that in my calendar, and by the way, anybody listening, they can jump into my calendar. I have open times on Wednesdays where people can just pop in. If you just want to have a one-on-one chat, that's my way of getting to chat with all kinds of people from around the world, anywhere, just to be able to say, I hear you, I see you, if there's anything I can share in your direction, in terms of what I've learned or something I've been able to pick up along the way, happy to share that back out. Happy to learn from you as well. Those exchanges, those are meaningful for me, so planting those back into my life, making certain that I am professionally more aligned in terms of my time allocation, because your time is the most precious resource that you have, right? I mean, no matter what you do, and I always talk about like the math behind it, but it is, if you think about it, no matter what job you do, no matter how much you're getting paid, you can never buy back time. Okay. So everything that job gives you, everything that any kind of contract you take, any kind of professional relationship you take, everything that you're going to get from that, if you're giving your time, it's kind of be lesser in that sense. So you have to make certain that what it gives, it enhances something else in your life that you do value, because time is a very, very precious thing. So I started allocating more time. And this past, month or so, actually, I decided to kind of do some pivoting in some ways professionally as well. So Validate has been my research agency that I work with, and I do different projects with researchers around, Europe, to be able to try to understand how can we be more responsible, how can we do better at more people. But actually, Validate has always been a sub-brand under another company that I own called Upward Insights. And that's a thing where I said, I'll get back to developing that at some point. I'll get back to being able to grow this out at some point, when I feel I've learned enough, when I feel like I've done enough and this kind of thing. And then I can share some of the research and things like this that I've done. But it occurred to me that I do need to make time for the sharing outward. Even at this point where I'm still kind of learning, I'm always going to be learning. There's never going to be a point where I have said, I've reached a point where I'm saying, I have now learned all there is to learn, and now I must begin sharing. It's a process. These things need to come, and work side by side. And this is why I'm spending more time having conversations, having Q&As, doing a little bit more consulting, ad hoc advisory services and such, because I realize that there's so much value that you have in life when you share. And for me, if I'm going to be putting time towards the things that I value, that means I have to allocate time towards that as well. So that's me kind of shifting my life professionally back towards something that supports me as a person, And I think that's an important thing. So these are not different lives that you lead. Your professional life is part of your personal life in that sense. And it is who you are as well for half of your waking time, in a day. So don't divide yourself. Be the person that you are, and making certain that, people that you have in your life, the things that you do in your life, value the person that you are. So I think, it's a better world when we give ourselves time and space and energy to be the person that we're meant to be in this place,
Hey dears. Okay, one quick note just to say this is actually part of a few chunks that you're going to get from this call with Baiba Žiga. Baiba is fantastic. I adore her. So I would definitely recommend subscribing so you can actually get a chance to be notified when the next part of this conversation comes out. Also, the full conversation is going to come out in about a week and a half or so. So stay tuned. That's coming your way. This is part of the series called Upward Conversations, which I have basically to encourage and support people who are making a positive change in the world or in the workplace. So if that happens to be you, I would love to just be able to say, hey, I'm so glad you're here and keep going. I really think you're doing great stuff. So let me know what you're up to. Let me know how I can support you. I want to help you and champion you in this way, okay? I made a note in this conversation that if you want to jump in my calls or my calendar, you're welcome to do that. Actually, I keep open times on Wednesdays. That is actually a current and accurate fact. So there should be a link on this one. I'll probably put it to the end of this conversation or in the comments below. Feel free to check it out if you want to. Or you can actually go to workupward.com and check out the Pep Squad. That's actually this one thing I have. It's very, very new. It's meant to basically just support people who are, you might just need some positive energy in your week. Feel free to pop in. It's priced to be super, super, super cheap. So that way anybody can just jump in and have a better day. And that's what I hope you have. So hope to see you around. And yeah, have a great one. Take care.